Well, the prevalence of ghost employees in the public sector continues to weigh heavily on government's wage bill and, of course, directly impacts efficiency. In an attempt to crack down on ghost workers, Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Public Service and Administration says workers should report in person as a form of verification. Let's unpack the story further with Professor Busani Ngcaweni. He's the principal at the National School of Government. He's also with the Wits School of Governance. And so, Prof, I can assume you are a governance expert. Welcome.
Thank you for the invite.
So why is this something that is still so prevalent in the public sector, and it's in all spheres, local, provincial, national?
That's correct, although less so in national and provincial administration. And there are three reasons why this is the case, if we could put it in a succinctly. The first will be, it will happen if there is corruption between officials within a department or government, as well as those who are so-called ghost employees. There's a relationship of corruption between the two in a sense that there is no government official who can fraudulently enroll 10 people onto a payroll or an HR system unless they have a direct benefit from it. So there will be a relationship of corruption between those within the system and those who are so-called ghost employees, whether it's in a government department or a parastatal. That's a first. The second is about the level of professionalism within an HR function in the public sector in general. And our Minister Buthelezi explained this in detail when he appeared before the Portfolio Committee, that you need to strengthen the HR function because there's a lot of porous borders in that space. And the third driver of it is the fact that most systems have not been automated. HR system there is. Most systems are still very manual, or which means that it depends on how many forms people are filling, and that is where then fraud could occur, because as many paper that passes through many hands must be filled and processed, there will then be porous borders. And so one way of dealing with it is one, professionalize the HR function within the system so that an HR person who works in any public entity can competently perform exactly the same function in a multinational organization anywhere else in the world, because we have a professional standard there. And that is why if you think about soccer for referee, once we're a FIFA accredited referee, it means you can referee a match in Quebec and you can referee a match in Madrid, because there's a professional standard that is followed. So that is one intervention that is required, and the minister is driving that. And second is about...
Sorry, Prof, can I just butt in here for a second and ask you this? So are you saying that if I am a legitimate employee, that somehow I have the power to add these additional employees, these ghost employees? I mean, how do they get there? How do they get into the system?
Well, there is someone who loads people onto a payroll system. Someone definitely does. It is either because there's a corrupt relationship, I have a benefit out of that arrangement, so I could put 5 people onto the system, and ordinarily if I put those 5 people, I might be getting a share out of their wages. I was told recently that even domestic workers do the same. There's a placement fee. If one has recruited one from any rural area in the country, or even from outside the borders, for as long as you occupy that job, you will be paying a particular fee to the one who placed you. So in this instance, it means those who are controlling HR system, who eventually have the authority in the system to upload the people, surely should have some benefit out of that type of an arrangement, because you don't do it out of a generosity of your own heart.
Right.
So that is how people will manipulate, more so if they are not automated.
Right. So, I mean, with the domestic worker example, at least the domestic worker exists. And so, you know, the placement fee is for someone that exists and is doing a job. In terms of the people who are loading these non-existent workers onto the system, there are surely only a select few people who have the power to load anyone onto the system, right? And so it should be easy for us to find out who created this profile.
That's correct, and which is what the minister was saying to the Portfolio Committee, because for every so-called ghost employee, you can trace who loaded the person onto the system. In particular, at national and provincial administration, where the payroll system called PESAL has got checks and balances, you can track the people who are on the system. You will be able to identify those. I wish to clarify the following though. Sometimes we conflate the so-called ghost employees with people who are legitimately employed, but they don't come to work.
Right.
Those who are absconding. So those people sometimes could be classified as ghosts because those who report in that environment do not know them since they never come to work because they're absconding. And there are separate laws that deal with those. But in this case, we are dealing with what do HR and finance officials do to make sure that people who are paid are legitimate.
Right.
In Sierra Leone last day, if I may give you that example, the president there did a census of the public service in Sierra Leone. And what they decided to do was to stop all salaries. So nobody got paid and everybody had to say, hello, my name is Busani Ngcaweni. I was appointed on this particular date. This is my position. So in 90 days, they had done a census and they were able to eliminate the so-called ghost employees. Of course, it's a difficult example I'm making because it's a post-conflict society. But here at home, when there is anything called a ghost employee, you must know that those people who are ghosts have a relationship with people within the system, and it takes more than one individual to load people onto the payroll and to process those payments.
So Prof, the ghost employees, are they? I'm not sure how to phrase this question, but are they actual people? So if I work in HR in the public service, am I using legitimate ID numbers to load someone onto the system, someone who will never come to work? But these are actual people with actual profiles, and do they even know that they've been loaded onto the system?
Well, it may as well be that is the case. In some cases, there might be no individuals at all. It's like frauding, insurance, using credentials of a person who's long dead, or even using credentials of a person who's still alive, and you commit fraud.
But you need a legitimate ID number, don't you?
You do, and they find those. That is why they can swindle you and take your entire pension, because they will find means of getting your own ID number. So they do. That is why this is a systemic. It's fraud. It is not just by chance. It's unlike someone who sees a lady driving on the traffic light and sees a window open and goes and grabs the bag out of it because that's a chance. It is more systemic than people taking a chance. It is planned, it's executed, and it takes more than one individual to do it.
I mean, as an example, I suppose I might willingly give my ID number to be a ghost employee to get a cut of the salary for this employee who will never show up to work.
Well, in institutions where borders are extremely porous, at HR, at finance and governance in general, you can have a syndicate that could then load 100 people or more, which means they have an ability to get as many IDs, load them onto the system, and have several people who then will be pressing the button to make sure that those payments are processed. You will recall, as the minister said in Parliament recently, in the government, there is what is called payroll certificate. Myself as an accounting officer, I must sign those things. Everybody has to be accounted for. That is why, therefore, the chances of ghost employees existing at national and provincial administration is lower than at a municipality level, as well as at agencies and SOCs, because of how the payroll system is organized, which is why I am arguing that part of closing the porous HR borders, we have to automate the system. It's easy to verify. People must enter the credentials. You can track who interacted with the system. Secondly, we have to professionalize HR and build a cadre of HR practitioners who are ethical, who will be able to pick these things up, which is fraud, whether it's committed by their own colleagues or anyone in the system, and they are able to deal with them and stop those type of payments. Because it's a very systemic thing. To the extent that some of the processes are manual, that is what you will have. I may just tell you that a few years ago, the Auditor General decided to audit participants in EPWP and Community Works program. All they did was to match an ID number of a participant in the EPWP program together with the payments that were made. And as a consequence of it, the porous borders that may have existed because there were allegations were therefore narrowed or closed in many instances. So by automating this system, we are able to pinpoint who interacted with the system, at what point, what was their level of authority in interacting with the system, and what duty they perform. Finally, you've raised a very important one around consequence management. One reason why I like the SIU, by the way, is the fact that if I fraudulently upload, by 50 of my friends and slave queens and everybody else onto a government payroll system and I pay them, if the SIU is aware, the first thing they will do is to take away my ability to enjoy that which I gained fraudulently, which is why they then do asset freezer and forfeiture whilst we are busy being processed. That's a very important step of consequence management, because it means I will not enjoy the benefits of what I got fraudulently if they freeze those assets. That's part of what has to be done with the consequence management arrangement. And also just getting people to the streets, fire them, getting them out there, suspend them sometimes without pay. They can back it out in court. But as they are outside the system, you are able to complete your investigation and deal with it. Unions, fortunately, are very cooperative on these things. Very few union leaders are protecting these, grossly corrupt, individuals. If there might be a union leader who say that, it might as well be that someone who's complicit as well. But in the majority of cases, there are clear cases of fraud and looting of states, the resources. They have been cooperative. I know many DGs who suspend people for such things, and the unions don't resist because they know they cannot support wrongdoing.
Right. I mean, the point is, Prof, there are ways to deal with this issue of ghost employees. You've mentioned a few of them. One is to automate the system. You've mentioned the case study of Sierra Leone, where physically there was a roll call that was done of sorts to say, if you are X, come and report and sign here. But the point is, we should be further down the line in dealing with the issue of ghost employees. How difficult can this be? And why have we dragged our feet?
No. I don't think there's any dragging of the feet. I can tell you, amongst ourselves, at least as accounting officers in the public sector, there is not dragging our feet. Many DGs, CEOs, and municipal managers that I know, they take this thing very seriously. There are more complex, fraud issues that we are dealing with than this one. So there is not dragging our feet. It is not in our best interest. Besides, we will be held accountable if we don't do it. As soon as I become aware, through the payroll report that I get from my colleagues at HR and finance, I need to act on those. I need to recover that money. It's often in large institutions where the institution itself is fragile, such that they are chasing other mega big, corruption and other complications, and then this matter can persist for a couple of months. As I have argued, there are more people in some spaces in the public sector who don't come to work than those who may be on sick leave, protracted stuff, than those who may be ghost employees. Usually, ghost employees will occur when there is a mega project taking place in a parastatal or somewhere where we are recruiting 5,000 people for a specific project. Then people will enter the system because the borders tend to be porous during that point. But ordinarily, if you walked into any other department and checked, I can't imagine the presidency having a ghost employee, because there's HR there is a CFO, there is a DG, and everybody knows the meaning and the consequences of paying someone who doesn't come to work. The pressure we are facing as DGs now is taking consequences or meting out consequence management against those people who abscond, those who don't come to work. That's a bigger pressure that we are facing. This one of ghost employees, I think the borders that were porous are slowly closing. The AG does do a thorough audit on these things, and as accounting officers, we are fully aware of our responsibility. But most importantly, the work we are doing as an NSG to professionalize the public sector will go a long way in reversing some of these issues that we are raising, because we'll have these HR officials who are professional, who've got integrity, who can use tools and AI systems to further protect the HR borders, to make sure that there is integrity in the system.
Yeah, and maybe one day we can even get the money back, all of this money that's been paid to people who don't exist or people who have never come to work, recovering those hundreds of millions of rand and what it would be do for the economy. Let me thank you for your time, Prof. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Professor Busani Ngcaweni is the principal at the National School of Government. All right.